diminution in power. By the same token, had Persia's great king Artaxerxes staged a massive invasion of Hellas at this time, on the model of the invasion mounted by his father Xerxes in 481, the two main Greek powers might well have worked again in tandem, and the peace between them would almost certainly have endured, at least for a time. But 3 years before, in 449, the King of Kings had accepted the terms that the Athenians had once dictated to his father, and to all appearances, Persia had withdrawn from the scene, leaving that empire's former antagonists warily eyeing one another. In the circumstances, there was much for statesmen, would-be statesmen, and ordinary citizens to ponder. Was the struggle with Persia genuinely over? Was the contest setting Sparta and her allies against Athens and hers really finished? Or were the two agreements bringing combat to an end, the Peace of Callias and the 30 Years' Peace, no more than truces? Could there ever be a lasting settlement with Persia? Could trust and goodwill be reestablished between the two principal Greek powers? Or, in the absence of a common threat, was there no foundation for their cooperation? And if this was the case, was Sparta's victory in 446 a freak accident or an indication of her enduring strategic superiority? These were the questions asked at the time, and there were more, for Athens was supreme at sea and Sparta on land, and it was exceedingly difficult, if not impossible, for either city to project power on the element dominated by the other. In time, everyone wondered, were war to break out again, which of the two would have the greater leverage? In extremis, would the weaker party look to Achaemenid Persia for aid, and would the great king intervene? There were a great many other questions asked as well, for each of the cities within the two coalitions had her own history and her own peculiar concerns, and the same can be said for the communities which had been neutral during Sparta's First Attic War. Moreover, most of the Greeks who lived in these diverse cities and were possessed of a voice in the public assemblies that governed these tiny republics were extremely narrow in their outlook, and within their particular polis they were a quarrelsome lot. In the best of circumstances, they were inclined to calculate solely with regard to their own community's parochial interests. In the worst of circumstances, they would turn on one another, and each of the factions that emerged would be tempted to seek support abroad. In the Spartan regime, which was intended to serve as a prelude to a series on the evolution of Lacedaemonian foreign policy, I analyzed the character of the Spartan polity, traced its origins, and described the grand strategy that the Lacedaemonians first articulated in the mid-6th century, before the Persians burst on the scene, for the defense of that polity and the way of life associated with it. In the early chapters of the first volume in the series, The Grand Strategy of Classical Sparta, the Persian Challenge, I restated the conclusions reached in that prelude and explored in detail the manner in which the Spartans gradually adjusted that strategy to fit the new and unexpected challenge that suddenly loomed on the horizon when the Mede first appeared. Then, in the last 4 chapters of the work, I described the fashion in which they organized and managed the alliance with which they confronted and defeated the invader bearing down on Hellas. In that volume's sequel, Sparta's First Attic War, I traced the manner in which the victorious Hellenes gradually and awkwardly worked out a post-war settlement that seemed to suit all concerned, and I paid particular attention, as in its predecessor, to neglected aspects of the story, above all to the grand strategy pursued by the Lacedaemonians in this period, to the logic underpinning it, to the principal challenge to which it was exposed.